Making movies is difficult. Making decent ones is much more difficult. It's a lengthy, tedious, and sometimes uninteresting procedure, and even the tiniest error may have a significant impact. It becomes more difficult when you're low on funds. However, excellent painters have done it several times. Let's take a look at the top 10 best low-budget horror movies. Before we get further, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to get notified about our latest videos. Alright, let's get into it. Number 10, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Budget, $720,000. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is currently one of the most successful in the genre's history. There were several sequels and prequels, and Leatherface became a slashed icon. It all started almost 40 years ago during a sweltering Texas summer. A mainly inexperienced team was working on a film that would go on to become one of the most significant works of horror filmmaking. It was a huge hit, making over $30 million. At number 9, Black Christmas, 1974. The budget, $620,000. Black Christmas, sometimes regarded as the first true slasher film, was among the first to establish the renowned formula. An unknown murderer killing a bunch of young teens one by one while the authorities strive, if unsuccessfully, to apprehend him. It also established the notion of the last girl. Unlike virtually every other slasher, she isn't a blameless virgin. $620,000 isn't much of a budget, but luckily Bob Clark understood what he was doing and managed to produce a rather good film considering the circumstances. There was suspense, death, mysteries, and a fantastic cast. What it lacked was good fortune. At number 8, Cannibal Holocaust, 1980. Budget, $337,185. Most people associate discovered footage films with titles like The Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity. Cannibal Holocaust is sadly unknown outside of horror fans. Sure, it's on every list of the most terrifying films of all time, but it doesn't receive enough credit for establishing a new subgenre and pushing the frontiers of horror. It's a gruesomely told narrative of civilizations merging, but it depicts the consequences of the collision impartially, leaving us unclear about who the true culprits are. The low budget is barely evident, the locales are fantastic, and the usage of genuine tribes people adds to the authenticity. At number 7, Halloween, 1978. John and Deborah Hill wrote the script. It was shot in 20 days, and the budget was $325,000. It made a debut in October 1978. Most notable, reviewers didn't like it, and it didn't stop it from grossing $70 million. There were several allegations of sexism, and many blamed Carpenter for addressing sensitive issues in Halloween, albeit they weren't overly extreme, even by 1970 standards. From today's perspective, we have to conclude that it has lost most of its shock power, and is unlikely to frighten any seasoned moviegoers. Nonetheless, unlike the great majority of slasher films, it's a well-written, intelligent slasher with good performances. Number 6, The Hills Have Eyes, 1977. Budget, $230,000. The Hills Have Eyes established a cult following, grossed a respectable sum of money, and tragically, was followed by a gosh-awful sequel a few years later, just like the rest of the director's work. The film's plot may appear cliché, identical to hundreds of other comparable, often lesser films recently, but it's important to remember that it contained a novel and well-executed concept during the time of its release. There are certain problems such as the acting and the photography, but given the budget, The Hills Have Eyes is an undeniably unsettling and interesting experience. And number 5, Peeping Tom, 1960. Budget, $163,000. This film, now regarded as a masterpiece by critics, was responsible for the demise of Michael Powell's career. It appears that the narrative of Madman Phillips' filthy work was a bit... Of course, such a picture would not be as alarming now, but the 1960s were a different era, and films far milder than Peeping Tom would face censure and bans. The film was completed in less than a month, and it was released in theaters around 6 months later. It didn't take long for the population to trash it. It was dismissed as a useless bit of cruel exploitation, and no one attempted to decipher its deeper significance. And number 4, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, 1986. Budget, $110,000. The gross was modest, only about $600,000, but fairly good when taking the mind and budget. McNaughton went on to make more movies, but never achieved the greatness of his debut. Henry remained under the radar classic and got a sequel 10 years later that miserably failed. Number 3, Eraserhead, 1977. Budget, less than $100,000. It's fairly uncommon for public opinion to shift dramatically over time, and the Midnight movies are the clearest example of this. Films that were once dismissed as useless and outlawed became 7 art masterpieces. David Lynch's debut was an example of this. David's strange masterwork took him 5 hard years to complete. He went through a lot during that time, from being nearly entirely reliant on contributions to his cinematographer, Herbert Caldwell, passing away in his sleep during the second year of filming. But he did it. In 1977, Eraserhead was released. And number 2, The Last House on the Left, 1972. Budget, $87,000. Wes Craven has created several outstanding films that have earned him the label of the master of horror, but his debut remains the creepiest. The Last House on the Left was inspired by none other than the renowned Ingmar Bergman and his 1960 picture, The Virgin's Spring. The film turned out great considering it was shot in just a few days with amateur performers. It made a little more than $3 million and had mixed reviews, which was quite a triumph considering how exploitation pictures were considered at the time. Number 1, Pi, 1998. Budget, $68,000. This is the least expensive picture on this list, and it's likely the only one that didn't spark public uproar because of its themes. It's an excellent companion piece to Eraserhead, as the two are stylistically similar. However, Pi received somewhat higher reviews upon its initial release. A bright but misguided mathematician lives a lonely existence, seldom interacting with other humans. He adheres to 3 rules, all of which revolve around arithmetic and numbers. It gained critical praise, and almost immediately after its release, and it was a box office sensation. Well guys, that's it for this one. What'd you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to get notified of our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.